Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about Edward Thorndike and its law of learning. Also, what are the primary, secondary, and other subordinate laws of learning and its educational implications. So, before that, let's tackle what is law of learning. So, the theory that explains what conditions must be present for learning to occur and how to enhance learning. Laws of learning that is used to educational psychology. So what is learning according to Thorndike? The learning theory of Thorndike represents the original SR framework of behavioral psychology. Learning is the result of associations forming between stimuli and responses. Such association or habits become strengthened or weakened by the nature and frequency of the SR pairings. So, let's go further about definition of learning. So, definition of learning, an experiential process. It could be resulting in a relatively permanent change or not explained by temporary states, maturation, or innate response tendencies. First, let us know who is Edward Lee Thorndike. So, Edward Lee Thorndike was a U.S. psychologist who was born in 1874 in William, Massachusetts. His father was a minister and his mother is a homemaker. He graduated from high school in 1981 and from there he attended Wesleyan University, from which he graduated in 1895. He then continued his education at Harvard University in 1897. Thorndike began graduate work at Columbia University and earned himself in psychology in 1898 by focusing on animal behavior and learning process, especially the learning of cats. His great contribution to psychology were largely in the method of device to test and measure children's intelligence and their ability to learn. He conducted studies in animal psychology and psychology of learning and compiled dictionaries for children and young adults. His writing include educational psychology, mental and social measurements, animal intelligence, a teacher's workbook, and human nature and social order. Thorndike is one of the pioneers of educational psychology, formulated 3 laws of learning in the early 20th century. These laws are universally accepted and applied to all kinds of learning. The primary laws of learning are laws of readiness, laws of exercise, and laws of effect. The secondary laws of learning are law of primacy, law of intensity, law of recency, and the subordinate law of learning, law of multiple response, law of set attitude, law of analogy and assimilation, law of associative shifting. So let me go on to the first primary law of learning, which is the law of readiness. So let's differentiate what is law of readiness. So this is a law which states that learning is dependent upon the learner's readiness to act, which facilitates the strengthening of the bond between stimulus and response. So for example, an athlete who is highly motivated and eager to learn is more likely to be receptive to learning than one who is poorly motivated. So since readiness means a preparation of action, if one is not prepared to learn, learning cannot be automatically instilled in him. So, another example is unless the typist, in order to learn typing, prepares himself to start, he would not make much progress in a lethargic and unprepared manner. So, as a teacher, how do you apply the law of readiness? So, first, hook the learners before they ever begin the course. This can be done via a pre-work activity or a short video introducing the content. And second, let students know why it is important to learn a subject and what can they expect from the course.
Law of exercise, a law which states that in learning, the more frequently a stimulus and response are associated with each other, the more likely the particular response will follow the stimulus. The law implies that one learns by doing and one cannot learn a skill, for instance, by watching others. The law of exercise, therefore, is also understood as the one of use and disuse, in which case connections or bonds made in the brain context are weakened or loosened. So, what is the difference between the law of use and law of disuse learning? The law of use learning are strengthened with repeated trial or practice, while the law of disuse learning are weakened when trial or practice is discontinued. This law is simple. The more a person practices something, the better he or she is able to retain that knowledge. Things that are most often repeated are best remembered. For example, remember back in grade school when the teacher would have you write spelling words 3 times each and then use them in a sentence? Your teacher was practicing this law so that you are able to learn and enhance your learning skills. And we all know that practice makes progress. Part 2 of this law states that knowledge not used becomes weakened and disappears from memory. Use it or lose it is not just a random sayings. Your e-learning design should take this into account and provide learners the opportunity to use new information, applying it immediately, or connecting the new information to existing knowledge. Exercise is most meaningful and effective when a skill is learned within the context of a real-world application.
Another primary law of Edward Thorndike is the law of effect. From the word effect itself, it refers to the result or outcome of the specific action. It may bring a negative result or a good result. It depends on how the person deals with the situation. Same sequence in this law. Learning is strengthened when it is accompanied by a pleasant or a satisfying feeling. So meaning, a pleasing emotion prompts a good result of learning. Like for example, I came up in school having a good mood, and when my teacher raised a question for students, I volunteered to answer. Apart from that, during her discussion, I enjoy participating in her class. So with this, my learning enhances because of my pleasant mood that I had in the first place. So, moving forward to its next definition, which is learning is weakened when it is associated with an unpleasant feeling. As you can see, it is the opposite sequence of the first definitions that I had discussed earlier. The best example for this is Anna came to school feeling lost because of their family problems in home. Due to that, Anna wasn't able to participate well in class. Therefore, her learning is weakened due to her unpleasant feeling at first. That is why the emotional state of the learner affects the learning. In short, law of effect signifies the satisfying state that leads to consolidation and strengthening of the connection, whereas dissatisfaction, annoyance, or pain lead to the weakening out of the connection.
Hi guys! As of now, I am assigned to discuss the law of primacy that is belong to secondary laws of learning. So, first, we need to know what is law of primacy. Law of primacy and learning. Primacy, the state of being first, often creates a strong, almost unshakable impression and underlies the reason. An instructor must teach correctly the first time, and the student must learn correctly the first time. For example, a maintenance student learns a faulty repeating technique. Now, the instructor must correct the bad habit and reteach the correct technique. Relearning is more difficult than initial learning. Also, if the task is learned in isolation, it is not initially applied to overall performance, or if it must be relearned, the process can be confusing and time-consuming. The first experience should be positive, functional, and lay foundation for all that is to follow. So, primacy and recency effects in learning. There is the picture of the primacy and recency effects in learning. When we talk about primacy effect and recency effect, we are talking about the theory and application. The recency and learning. Primacy effect means that we remember best what we see or hear first. This becomes primacy. In learning, this means that we remember best what we learn first. The primacy effect is the beginning. You remember it is because it is where you started. The recency effect is the finish. You remember the end the best. Law of primacy. Learning that takes place in the beginning is the best and lasting. Learning should be done correctly for the first time since it is difficult to unlearn or change an incorrect learned material. Last, educational implication. The learning on the first day is the most vivid and strong. The teacher also should be most serious on the first day of teaching. For the instructor, this means that what they teach the first time must be correct. It is more difficult to unteach a subject than to teach it correctly the first time.
So let's proceed to the next law that is under the secondary laws of learning. So, law of intensity. What is law of intensity? The law of intensity states that if a stimulus or experience is real, the more likely there is to be a change in behavior of learning. On the other hand, the law of intensity, a vivid, dramatic, or exciting learning experience, teaches more than a routine or boring experience. So this law implies that a student will learn more from the real thing than a substitute. Like, for example, a student can get more understanding and appreciation of a movie by watching it than by reading a script. By this, it affects the student's behavior and how they interact in a particular thing. Real experience is a considerable learning behavior ladder.
Law of recency. It means that the things most recently learned are the best remembered. Frequent review and summarization help fix in the mind material covered. These principles determine the sequence of lectures within a course of instruction. A learner will learn more than the real thing than from a substitute. For example, if you are trying to memorize a list of items, the recency means you are more likely to recall the items from the list that you studied last.
So, we are up to the subordinate laws of learning. One of it is the law of multiple response. So, when can we say if that situation is applying the law of the multiple response? So, here it is. This law is confronted with a new situation which the learner responds in a variety of ways, arriving into the correct response. So meaning, if one response doesn't give satisfaction, it will innate a new response until that response becomes a correct one. Like for example, the teacher calls Anna to answer on the board, but her answer is incorrect. Anna at that time feels unsatisfied because she wants to correct her answer. So what she did was she erased her answer and try it again. In fact, she tried many times until she got it correct. So with that, Anna perfectly employs the law of multiple response. Another best definition of this law is the trial and error. For example, I was about to solve a puzzle, and in order for me to complete that puzzle, I may first encounter various of trial and errors to make it perfectly complete. Henceforth, those trials that I've done are considered as my responses to arrive the correct response, which is to complete that puzzle.
So let's move on to law of set attitude. Law of set attitudes refers to the predisposition of acting a certain way in response to prior learning attitudes. Act accusively toward accusive behavior. In this law, learning is guided by a total set or attitude of the learner, which determines not only what the learner will do but what will satisfy her or him. Means learning is affected more in the individual if he is set to learn more or to excel. The learner performs the task well if he has his attitude set in the task.
So the third subordinate laws of learning is the law of analogy and assimilation. So what is law of analogy and assimilation? According to this law, the individual makes the use of old experiences or associations while learning a new situation. There is a tendency to utilize the common elements in the new situation as existed in a similar past situation. So the law of analogy and assimilation is when the learners find the similarities as well as the dissimilarities in the lesson with daily experiences, he or she earns better. Hence, teaching must be correlated with life experiences. So the law of analogy and assimilation states our past experience as well as the lessons that we gain. So through this, we became more smarter on how to handle the situation because we had an already idea on how to handle in a particular situation for the reason that we've been there before.
Law of associative shifting. According to this law, we may get a response of which a learner is capable, associated with any other situation to which he is sensitive. Sometimes, a reaction to a certain stimulus might shift to a different one. In addition, associative shifting refers to the preparation among basic functions of human personality, for example, emotions, cognition, and perception, seen by as the sub-defining characteristic of schizophrenia.
To sum up all, everyone has understanding, resources, and interests on which to build. Teachers have a critical role in assisting learners to engage their understanding, building on learners' understandings, correcting misconceptions, and observing and engaging with learners during the process of learning.
So thank you for being with us from the beginning till the end, and hopefully you get a lots of learning about the Edward Thorndike, which is the laws of learning.